Welcome to the new 7 Series facelift, BMW's answer to the ever-present Mercedes-Benz S-Class. Over the past few decades, the 7 has inched closer and closer to the class benchmark, that is the Mercedes-Benz. But this new version is a clear step up from what we've seen before, and the 7 is in the best form of its entire lifetime. The question is, does this just get closer to the S-Class, or is this now the new standard bearer for the luxury sedan class? Let's find out. The G12 BMW 7 Series LCI is available in Malaysia in a single variant, the 740LE xDrive. But don't be fooled by the badge, this is identical to the 745LE you'd find in other markets. They've just stuck to the same badging as before to keep its EEV approved pricing. BMW Malaysia says without incentives, this car would cost over 900,000 ringgit. But with EEV pricing, this has brought it down to 595, which is, any way you look at it, is an absolute bargain for a luxury car. Now, this undercuts the S-Class by up to 100,000 ringgit. And before you say that prices don't matter in this class, let's not kid ourselves, Malaysia will always be a very price-sensitive market. We're not talking about ultra-luxury cars like Bentleys or Rolls-Royces here. These are still mainstream cars. But that is not to say it hasn't learned a trick or two from Rolls-Royce. BMW owns that brand anyway, right? So the 7 Series gets this massive front grille, much bigger than before, the largest we've seen on the 7 Series. It is a full 40% bigger than before in terms of size, and the bonnet itself has been raised by a full 50 millimeters than before. This is to give it that big upright grille that is more prominent and much more striking, more Rolls-Royce than a giant 3 Series. This big grille effect is also made even more pronounced by the slimmer, sharper headlamps, which by the way are still BMW laser lights and have these really cool blue inserts. Now, whether you like this look or not, well, you can blame the China market for this, because they've been asking for much more bling on the 7 Series, and this car has certainly delivered that. Unlike the S-Class, where there are 2 variants available with distinct faces, the 7 is only available in this standard face. You can't spec in the sportier M Sport exterior kit. What you're stuck with is this basic pure design excellence front end, which I think is the better for it, because the 7 does fit this more regal look better than the sportier M Sport face. What I don't like are the wheels, because they are exactly the same as the one on the old car, just that now it's been given a two-tone look. Now, this is what you'd expect from lesser brands to do to save cost, but not BMW. Now, before you start asking why, of course you can configure your cars, put in the M Sport kit, put on bigger wheels, larger wheels and whatnot, but unfortunately in Malaysia we have a very peculiar taxing system, so what the brands offer are the ones that you can buy. There's no ways around it. What's new for the facelift is the chrome line on the side behind the front wheels, where previously it looked like a hockey puck. Now it's much straighter, much more vertical. It sort of looks a little bit like a golf putter, I suppose. I guess that's the look they're going for. The extra chrome work is continued in the back as well, with this very thick line across the middle. Plus there's also this light strip that connects the 2 tail lamps together with this thick L-shaped lights. This car now looks very, very distinctive at night, and while you may still mistake a S-Class for a C-Class, you would not do the same mistake for the 7. So the BMW 7 Series LCI is still very much the sportiest looking luxury sedan you can buy. You don't even need bigger wheels or the M Sport kit for that. Whether this looks as luxurious as the S-Class remains a matter of taste, but I think in this color especially, BMW has nailed it. This Bernina grey paintwork is absolutely glorious. I think it adds a depth of specialness and a premium feel to the whole car. And just look at it, even has an amber glow under direct sunlight, together with the cognac interior. If I were to get a 7 Series, this would be the combo. Before you go into the car, I want to show you one thing. This, the BMW display key. This looks really cool, and I'm sure you've seen the videos where the driver can move the car forwards or backwards by just pressing buttons on the key itself. But unfortunately, we don't get that feature here. So what this is used for is just to look good. BMW display key to be displayed, I guess. So anyway, you also get a normal key, which is smaller, lighter, and less bulky. So yeah, you also have to charge this. So up to you which one you want to use. The good thing is you get both. Moving on to the interior, the 7 Series carries very little changes into the facelift, which to me is a rather odd choice. If you had asked me 3 years ago which part of the 7 I would change more of to make it more competitive against the S-Class, is definitely the interior. Now you see, the S-Class looks and feels like a proper flagship product on the inside. It feels way more special compared to an E-Class, whereas the 7, it just looks and feels like a normal 5 Series with slightly better materials, which is not as good. What they have changed is the screen over here, which is the latest generation BMW digital cluster, which may look good at a start, but once you live with it, you do feel that it's not quite clear enough, it's not legible enough, and it's nowhere near as customizable as those from other brands. And in this particular hybrid model, there's no ref counter. What you get is this weird e-boost meter, which doesn't tell you much. You only get a ref counter in sport mode, but how long do you think you'll drive the 7 Series in sport mode? Another change, but a rather more welcome one, is the new signal stock. Now this new one goes back to a normal traditional stock that sticks up and down as you use them. This is basically BMW admitting that yes, we were wrong the whole time. Here's a proper signal stock, so please use them. But before I keep going and BMW fans come at me with pitchforks, let's talk about the good parts, because there are a lot too. This car comes with extremely high specs in Malaysia. It gets full Alcantara headlining, it gets Nepal at the top dashboard and the door cards, and those things are missing in the local S-Class. Even as you go down here, everything feels top notch. Build quality is almost faultless. I say almost because I do find these small little volume buttons rather loud and feel a bit cheap. But beyond that, everything feels proper luxury level. Now moving on to the infotainment system, this has the latest BMW iDrive live cockpit system, which is the very best in the entire world. You can use this rotary knob if you want, or you can also use the touchscreen. I think it's still a little bit too far for my own liking. It's a full stretch, as you can see over here. But in terms of operation, the user interface is very clear, very easy to use. This also has one of the very few applications of wireless CarPlay. So while you can have your phone on you or on the wireless charging pad down here, you can still access CarPlay like that on the screen. This is fantastic, and moving back to a wired integration feels very old school after this. Now moving on to a few more things that I like or don't like about the interior. The Harman Kardon audio system sounds a lot better than the similar Burmester system on the S-Class, although this car's ambient lighting is nowhere near as fancy as what you get in the S-Class. You only have 6 color options instead of 64 in the Mercedes, and you don't even get a color cycle option that changes colors as you drive along. You're stuck with one choice the whole time. But on the other hand, you also get this brilliant sky lounge system. The sunroof has light beads on it and it looks glorious at night. On the other hand, I do have a small issue with this car's ergonomics. Now you see, I like to drive very close in front, very close to the steering wheel, and if I were to rest my left hand on this elbow pad over here, it's fine. But for me, since I'm short, I do find me knocking this hard part down here. It's not very comfortable. On a long cruise, this can get very annoying really quickly. And one last thing, the reverse camera. That's right, just a reverse camera. This car does not have a 360 surround view, which was fitted in the pre-facelift car but somehow removed for this facelift car. So what you get is a standard reverse camera, and not a very good one at that. So parking this car is an absolute pain. What you get is a reverse assistant, which is very cool in theory, but Malaysians, we all reverse park anyway, right? So that system is ultimately useless. Now onto the rear quarters of the 7 Series, and in this car, this can be just as important as the front. The seats themselves are supremely comfortable, wrapped in Nepal leather, and there's a whole host of adjustments. There's a whole control pod of adjustments over here, and you can adjust the recline, the seat height, and even the headrest. How cool is that? Beyond that, you can use this nifty tablet over here, and you get massage functions as well. Like you can change from pelvic activation to whole body activation, or even an upper body exercise or lumbar massage. But the thing is, they don't really feel that good. All you do feel is just a little bit of pulses here and there. And one thing missing in this car is ventilated seats. That's available in the S-Class. The screen over here also gives you access to all the in-car controls, such as the blinds and the sunroof. Just one tap and everything closes. How cool is that, right? Beyond that, you can also control your aircon if you can't be bothered to reach down there to control the fan speed and temperature and whatnot. You can just use this, adjust it within your fingertips. Very nice. So beyond this Samsung tablet, which you can store in the middle here, you also get a pair of big screens for you to watch movies on, for you to listen to radio and whatnot. And these are also touchscreen units. You can also cast whatever's on your phone to the screens over here, but for now they only work for Android devices and not iOS, which is a bit of a shame because, well, this car is the only car with wireless CarPlay, which is very, very good, but you can't mirror that iPhone onto these screens, which is a bit weird. But this is much, much better than what's offered in the Mercedes-Benz S-Class, because in the S-Class, it's not a touchscreen, there's no tablet here, and what you get is this very hard to use rotary controller. It's like a TV remote, very, very old school. But there's one thing that the S-Class has over this, which is executive seats. On that one, there's a button where you can hold, and the whole seat goes onto a very nice reclined position, like in a business class seat. This car does not have that option. So overall, it's a bit of a mixed bag. Certain things this car has, certain things that car has. So yeah, there's no perfect car for now. But for me, I think you just need to go around in this car at night with all the light play going on. And yeah, I think you'd pick this car over anything else on the road today. Just a quick one on the boot. This car has 420 litres, not the biggest in the class, but more than enough for a couple of golf bags for a weekend away. Okay, so now it's time to find out if what BMW says is true. The 7 Series is made not just for people with drivers, but people who drive their own cars as well. So the engine up front is a 3-litre twin-turbo inline 6, and that itself makes 286 PS and 450 Newton meters of torque. Beyond that, there's also an electric motor, so combined this whole car makes 394 PS and 600 Newton meters of torque. That is a huge upgrade compared to this car's predecessor, the 740LE of the pre-facelift version. In other markets, this is badged as a 745 to show that this car has a lot more power as well. The old car had a 2-litre 4-cylinder, this one has a 3-litre 6-cylinder. So in terms of performance, it is a big jump, and jump is the exact correct word because this car jumps off the line like no other limo. This is not an M car, this is not an M performance car even, but this has the performance to match most M performance cars. 0 to 100 is done in just 5.1 seconds for a car weighing 2 tons. That is amazing. So helping that is this car's lighter weight, and that is partly because of the BMW carbon core construction in this car. So apparently there's a bunch of carbon fiber bits within this car's chassis construction to shave off a few kilos here and there. So compared to the previous generation car, this car is about 200 kilograms lighter, but at the same time it's not quite as light and agile as the aluminium based cars such as the A8 Audi and the Jaguar XJ. But compare this with the S-Class, this is far more agile. But agility here is just in terms of body control and how much you can throw this car around bends. This is still a huge car, 2 tons like I mentioned, but you can hustle this car around corners like in a way that you wouldn't do in the S-Class. But having said that, while body control is great, the steering is not very good. This car has an overly light steering wheel, which is unlike any other BMWs I've driven. It feels a little bit disconnected somehow. The S-Class steering is actually better than this, but overall I think this has a slightly more pleasant driving experience, much more enjoyable, and that engine in front is so smooth. I think it's quite possibly the smoothest 6-cylinder in the world. Just let it, see, just hear it go. It's so smooth, it's so nice to rev. And even for a big luxury car, you do hear a little bit of the engine note, but not much else. As you can see, the car is rolling around at 60 kilometers per hour, and even at 160 there's very little road noise, there's very little wind noise. The facelift introduces slightly thicker windows compared to the pre-facelift, and this car does not get double glazing like it does in the S-Class. But in terms of wind noise, this is very controlled. This is very, very good. Part of what makes this car so smooth is the plug-in hybrid system. So when you're going around in town, this car is not actually using the engine at all. It's running its electric motors. There's a big 12 kilowatt hour battery behind the rear seats, and that one will run the car in pure electric mode for up to 46 kilometers. Well, that's what BMW claims anyway. I didn't get anything above 30 kilometers, but if your everyday commute is around, say, 15 kilometers, you can go back and forth and charge it every night, and that is basically fuel-free motoring. That is all electric, pure electric motoring. This being a PHEV, it is a must that you use it as a PHEV and not as a regular car. You do have to charge it almost every day, or at least every few days, because if you don't, you're just lugging around the battery without having any of the benefits. You are practically wasting away a big part of what makes this car so good. Quick note on fuel consumption: if you do charge this car every night, every day, you will get fantastic fuel consumption figures, 20-30 kilometers per liter. But that of course does not take into account the cost of charging your car in the first place, because if you charge at home, you do have to pay for the electricity obviously. But if you just look at the fuel cost itself, this can get you very good economy figures. But there is a problem, and that is if you bring this car for long distance cruises, because as soon as you hit the highway, you're likely to have used up most of the battery in the first place. So for the rest of the journey, you're stuck using just the engine and fuel. The issue is this car has a tiny 46-litre fuel tank compared to 75 or 80 litres in what you'd find in most of its rivals. This is a common issue with most BMW plug-in hybrids actually. The old previous generation 330e had like a 40-litre fuel tank or something, which is ridiculous. So in terms of total cruising range, this car is a bit limited. Say you average about 10 kilometers per litre on the highway, 46-litre tank, you'll be hitting 500 kilometers max before you have to fill up the small fuel tank. You will not be reaching 800, 1,000 kilometers on a single tank with this car. So for short distances, for city town driving, this is great, but for long distance cruises, yeah, it's fine. It's just that you have to make a few more fuel stops. This engine being so smooth actually adds on to the plug-in hybrid experience, because as you drive along, you're not sure whether the engine is actually on or off. In town, you're very likely to be in full EV mode, because this car can go in full electric mode at up to well over 100 kilometers per hour. That is with a light throttle, of course. But if you demand more power out of the powertrain, the engine will come on at some point, but for the most part, you won't really feel it. You won't even hear it unless you go full throttle, of course. The transitions here are very, very smooth, very well integrated, and there's no pauses, there's no lapses of power like you do in the older generation of plug-in hybrid vehicles. This, I think, is far more advanced, far smoother than whatever you get in comparable Volvos and Mercedes-Benzes. BMWs have always had a very poor track record of the engine stop-start system. Anybody who has driven an F30 will know that that's something you have to turn off every single time you start the car. But this car, that problem has been banished completely. Whether the engine is on or off, you don't know, you wouldn't care, because the car just goes. This being a luxury sedan, the ride comfort is obviously very, very important, and the 7 Series has never been super strong in this department compared to the S-Class. It has always been shaded in this department. This G11 G12 BMW 7 Series is the first generation to get BMW's 2-axle air suspension. That has been the staple of S-Classes since as far back as 1998. But no matter, this car now has it, and you can really feel the difference. The car now floats over bumps, it flattens out pretty much everything that you see, and PJ roads have never felt smoother, let's just say that. But of course, these being very, very high level cars, we do need to compare it against the S-Class. That is still the pinnacle of motor vehicles, I think, and at the extreme ends, that is still very slightly more comfortable. At low speeds especially, the S-Class is riding more supple. This has a bit more intrusion coming into the cabin at low speeds, but as the speeds go higher, the difference gets smaller and smaller. This is supremely comfortable at a cruise. To combat that, there's a special mode called Hybrid Comfort, or in a non-hybrid version, it's called Comfort Plus. This, I believe, is what BMW thinks is the S-Class ride mode. This gives the car an extra floaty feeling as you drive along, but I think they sort of like overcooked it. It's a bit too soft, too wallowy. It feels like the S-Class from past generations rather than the current generation. So it's comfortable, but at the same time you also feel like you're being thrown about a little bit. If you go a bit faster, it can feel a little bit nauseous. This being a BMW though, there is the customary sport mode for, you know, whenever you feel the need for speed. Oh, that sounds awful. Anyway, if you do have the need for speed, you can use the sport mode, and this car tightens up really well. The steering gets slightly heavier. It's still, there's not much feel to it, of course, but in terms of handling, you would need a very well-driven Jaguar XJ to keep up with this car. This may be a huge car, but you can still chuck it along like you're driving a 3 Series, a 5 Series, and that's not something you can say about the S-Class. S-Class drives like an S-Class, and you have to drive it with respect like it is a huge luxury barge. This one, if the red mist comes on, you can still chuck it along, have fun with it. And I think that duality nature is the best bit about the 7 Series. It's a pity that in terms of absolute comfort, it's not quite as good as the S-Class, but as an overall breadth of ability, this has a wider range, I think. There is a price to pay for all this, of course, for this added agility. The steering rack has been made very, very quick, but also very short. So the wheels don't turn as much as you think they should. So maneuvering this car around tight parking lots, like say my own parking lots, it's a bit of a pain. I found myself making a couple of 3-point turns, which I would never do in a comparably sized Mercedes-Benz S-Class. Now, going through the spec sheet, I've noticed that BMW Malaysia has taken off the integral rear wheel steering option for this car. Now, that was fitted in the pre-facelift 740, but it has been taken off for this facelift 740 LE, which I don't get why. So there is a big difference, because you now feel the size of this car going through parking lots. When you're driving it faster, it does shrink around you like a 3 Series, but when you are going through tight parking lots, this is a massive beast. You do feel every bit of its 5.3, 5.2 meter length and over 2 meter width. So pair all that with its massive turning circle, its lack of 360-degree cam, and yeah, I do have issues with whoever made that decision to take off all those things. I mean, taking off the paddle shifters on this car, that's fine. It's a luxury barge, who cares? But you park every day. Why would you take cameras that would make your parking experience easier? I just don't get it. Just a quick note on this car's safety and active driving assistance features. This car gets the full suite: active cruise control, active lane keep assist, and all that. And when you use everything together, this car does come with semi-autonomous driving features. You can sort of like let go of the steering wheel, let the car steer, and apply throttle and brakes at the same time. It's just that when you do everything together, it doesn't feel quite as natural feeling as what the S-Class offers. And this is not just against BMWs, it's also against Volvos and whatnot. It sort of feels like you're having an amateur driver behind the wheel. The steering input's very choppy. It's as if it's bouncing off the lines, and even the throttle and braking inputs are not as smooth. It's as if it's a small little person stabbing and applying throttle in a very non-linear fashion. So in terms of that, the S-Class system is very slightly better. It's still not perfect. There's still a long ways to go before you can actually relax in your car doing proper autonomous driving car. But in terms of what we have available at the moment, BMW system is not quite there yet. So summing everything up, this is a fantastic car to drive. The steering is a bit dead, but as a big car, this is as good as it gets basically in terms of handling. This is one of the few cars this big, this heavy, that you can enjoy driving. I don't think an S-Class is an enjoyable car to drive. It's an enjoyable car to be in, but not to drive. This does both. It's fun to drive, it's really great to be in, just that in terms of ultimate luxury, ultimate comfort, the S-Class still shades this a little bit. So that's my take on the latest BMW 7 Series facelift here in Malaysia. In short, there is a lot to like with this car. For what it offers, I think it's actually cheap here. And this big grille, it may be a little bit crude, but it works for the whole look of the car. The interior, minus a few little bits, is very high quality, very comfortable, and the drive, it's a proper BMW. One of the very best 6-cylinder engines in the world, together with proper handling, agile enough, and even the comfort comes very close to what the S-Class offers. So overall, objectively, this has the measure of the S-Class. It's just that I think as an overall luxury experience, it's the S-Class that feels a little bit more special compared to this one. But then again, being different at this level is not such a bad thing, and I for one would approve anybody who would choose this over an S-Class, especially in this color.